Have you ever felt the weight of a gaze that lingers longer than it should? That kind of look that is neither distracted nor neutral, yet also does not make itself known. A gaze that seems to say everything, and at the same time withdraws at the very moment it could be confirmed. He observes you as one who inspects a mirror, not to see you, but to see himself through you. His gaze searches for something, perhaps courage, perhaps excuses. Sartre said that, "The look of the other turns me into an object." And that is exactly what hurts, when someone desires you, but won't make a move. You cease to be a subject with desires, and become an awkward reflection of another's cowardice. A prolonged look, when not followed by words, is a silent prison. He is not just looking at you. He is denying his own freedom to act. Imagine a stage where the play has already begun, but the leading actor refuses to step into the scene. He stays backstage, peeking through the curtain, waiting for something magical to happen. That you speak first, that the universe pushes the plot forward. But deep down, he is already on stage. Every time he looks at you, he participates in the story. The silence is part of the script. The absence is a presence. Perhaps you have experienced this in a cafe, at work, or in that friendship that hung suspended in the air. He looks at you as someone sees a safe harbor, but fears the storm that comes with the commitment to dock. Because admitting that he feels something is taking responsibility. And Sartre reminds us, with freedom comes the weight of choosing, and the terror of not being able to blame anyone else for your choice. A gaze that lingers is the first gesture of bad faith, not out of malice, but out of flight. He feels, but doesn't want to feel. He wants, but doesn't want to admit he wants. He waits for you to guess, decipher, understand, without having to commit himself. This is not romance. It is cowardice disguised as mystery. Now stop and think. In how many situations of your life have you also looked at someone this way? How many times have you delayed speaking, trusting that the other person would notice, that time would resolve it? Perhaps you are on the other side of that scene. And that is the silent tragedy of affection. Everyone waits. Few move. But there is something liberating in recognizing this. Because when you understand that his gaze is not just about you, but about the internal struggle he wages between the freedom to love and the fear of losing control, you begin to reposition yourself. You cease to be a spectator of his doubt and begin to star in your own choice. You can continue waiting for him to speak, or you can choose to live outside another's gaze, breaking with the expectation that someone else will save us from loneliness. Because the truth is, no one saves us. In relationships, as in existence, we are all condemned to freedom. And to love, even in silence, is still a choice. Choosing not to speak is, too. If he is dying for you and doesn't say it, that says a lot about him. But what does it say about you who still waits for him to say it? There are silences that scream, not with sounds, but with tension. Have you ever been with someone who, even in constant presence, never says what really matters? The words remain in the eyes, in the gestures, in pauses that drag on too long. It's as if the throat were a minefield, where any confession could blow up a part of life he has carefully kept, intact. And so he chooses silence, but not a peaceful silence. A heavy, almost suffocating silence. A silence that envelops you like fog. You feel that there is something there, but you cannot see it clearly. Sartre said that every choice is a denial of other possibilities. And for many, declaring love is choosing a path that closes off all other roads. It is not just fear of rejection, it is fear of defining oneself. Because to love is to commit to a version of oneself. It is to declare, I choose to feel this, for you, now. And there are those who cannot cope with that sentence. They prefer the open field of indeterminacy. They prefer to keep you close, but without a name, without form, without promise. But the paradox is cruel. By trying to avoid the weight of choice, they end up carrying the weight of silence. They live in an affective limbo, where every affectionate gesture must be disguised. Every caring act comes with a disclaimer. Every beautiful moment is immediately sabotaged by a joke or a change of subject. And then you wonder, Does he feel or not? What is he waiting for? The answer may hurt, but it frees you. He is waiting for love to happen on its own, for feelings to mature without conflict, for truth to appear without him assuming the risk of revealing it. But that never happens, because any affection not assumed turns into noise. Unspoken love rots in silence, and you feel it between the lines. You feel it when he hesitates, when he reaches out to you for no reason, when the farewell takes longer than necessary, when there is a sigh before he lets you leave, when he says take care as someone who wanted to say stay. All these are attempts to love without committing, and that attempt is an existential prison. He is imprisoned by his own freedom. He is afraid to choose, because he knows that by choosing, he also becomes responsible. He can no longer blame time, shyness, trauma. By choosing to love, he becomes the author of his own script. And you? At what point in the waiting are you? Do you still try to translate that silence? Do you still fantasize that one day he will wake up and simply say what he feels? Or have you already realized that this silence is not a pause? It is his speech. It's hard to admit. When someone doesn't speak, they are already saying something. His silence is a choice that affects you, and you have the right to choose what to do with it. Wait, demand, accept, or leave. But don't fool yourself. No one is neutral in matters of the heart. Even those who keep silent are saying who they are. Do you want him to say something? Or are you ready to hear what his silence has always tried to hide? He disappears, not abruptly, but with elegance. Says he is busy, needs space. Life is chaotic. They are precisely choreographed escapes, disguised as rational justifications. He builds a labyrinth of excuses where love can hide without being confronted. It's not that he doesn't feel. It's that feeling places him before a choice. And to choose, for him, is to strip off the armor of doubt. Sartre would call this bad faith, an attempt to escape one's own freedom, pretending not to have a choice when, in fact, everything is a choice. Pretending that work is more important, that the moment is not right, that he is still healing. All of this is bad faith, not because the reasons are false, but because they serve to mask the real reason: fear of effective responsibility. When you love someone in silence, you still love. When you avoid someone out of fear of revealing yourself, you still commit. And that silent commitment shapes the relationship. He flees, but always returns. He distances himself, but never breaks off. It is like a dancer who steps back every time the music invites an embrace. He is present enough to keep you, but absent enough not to have to commit. These strategic escapes reveal more than they hide. He knows exactly the impact he causes. He knows that, by distancing himself, he plants uncertainty. And in uncertainty, you are the one who continues dancing alone, trying to guess the next steps, trying to keep the music playing. Meanwhile, he watches, from afar, with relief perhaps, because while you occupy yourself deciphering him, he protects himself from the need to show himself. But every escape has a price. For him, the price is living on the margin of his own desire. For you, it is living in the expectation of a return that never completes. You accept crumbs because you learn to romanticize absence. And perhaps you don't even realize that you are giving yourself fully to someone who only surrenders in halves. The question is, why do you accept these escapes as proof of depth? Why have you turned his absence into a sign of contained love, when it may be just fear in disguise? Sartre reminds us that freedom is not easy. It demands courage to be, and that applies to those who love, but also to those who wait to be loved. Maybe it's time to invert the logic. What if each of his escapes is in fact a clear answer? And if he doesn't return because he loves you, but because he fears losing control? And if you are not being chosen, but kept on standby while he decides who he wants to be? You are waiting for someone who runs away to return. But what if the true movement is for you to stop waiting? He is always near, does not invade, does not impose, only makes himself present, almost imperceptibly but consistently. He is there in moments when you need it, in messages that come for no apparent reason, in comments that show he pays attention to details of your life. But he never crosses the line, never allows himself to be evident, never says, "I am here because I love you." And it is precisely this contained presence that confuses the most. Sartre speaks of the project as what each person builds with their own freedom. A love is a project. It demands choice, intention, action. But there are those who prefer to remain in the stage of the situation, that territory where nothing is defined, where possibilities remain open and, therefore, less frightening. He lives in that in-between place. He is with you, but not for you. This cautious presence is the most sophisticated way to keep control without taking risk. He appears so as not to disappear, but never shows himself truly. Like a traveler who insists on keeping his suitcase packed, he never unpacks the feeling, never puts down roots, and at the same time refuses to leave. This ambiguity wears you down, because it offers you the comfort of company without the consolation of certainty. It is an emotional survival strategy, to be present without surrendering. It's as if he says, "I want you in my life, but I don't want the responsibility of making you suffer." And in that attempt to protect both, he condemns you to a subtle kind of loneliness, being with someone who is never whole. This cautious presence is not neutral. It is a form of power. He defines the limits, sets the pace, and without realizing it, turns you into someone who waits for more, for a gesture, for a confession, for a day when this presence becomes assumed love. But that day never comes, because he has already made his choice, the choice to remain on the margins. And you? Why does this incomplete presence still feed you? What is so attractive about that caution? Maybe it's the hope that one day he will cross his own limit. Maybe it's the romantic idea that to love in silence is deeper than to love out loud. But be careful. Not every mystery is poetry. Sometimes it's just cowardice decorated. Sartre would say, "Man is the being whose being is in question." He is not in doubt about you. He is in doubt about himself. And as long as he does not choose himself as someone capable of loving fully, you will continue being the reflection of his indecision. Are you willing to be part of an unfinished project? Or has the time come to choose someone who is
whole, not just present? He says he doesn't care, that you should go out, meet new people, live your freedom, that there is no reason for jealousy, but the tone of his voice betrays something else. His gaze slips away, his expression hardens, his body gives away what words try to hide. They are small, almost imperceptible reactions, a cutting remark, a mood swing, a sudden silence, and all this appears when you mention someone new, or when he realizes he might lose you. He feels jealous, but
refuses to admit it, because admitting it is recognizing desire, and recognizing desire is declaring one's vulnerability. Sartre reminds us that being for others reveals us to ourselves in a way we do not control. The moment he admits feeling something for you, he surrenders to the possibility of being affected by you, of no longer being sovereign of his own emotion. And for someone who relies on the illusion of self-sufficiency, that is unbearable. It is safer to appear indifferent. It is more comfortable to let you go than to accept the shock of seeing you with another. But jealousy is there, escaping in the between the lines. And the most curious thing is that he does not want to control you. He only wants to ensure he still occupies a place in you. He wants to know that even if he is away, he still matters. That, even in silence, he is still remembered. That, even without declaring himself, he is reciprocated. This type of jealousy is cowardly, because he wants the benefits of love without exposing himself to surrender. He wants to be important to you, but not have to be present. He wants you to choose him without having to choose you. And this creates a vicious cycle. The more you try to show you feel something, the more he withdraws. The more you distance yourself, the more he reappears. He wants you close, but doesn't want to get close. He wants to be loved, but doesn't want to love. Have you already noticed this in someone? Have you felt tested, as if your loyalty were being measured without you even being invited to the game? Have you experienced being emotionally teased by someone who then pretends not to understand why you're hurt? These small jealousies hide an uncomfortable truth. He feels something, but doesn't want to deal with what that means. Because feeling is the first step to committing. And committing means losing the comfort of not having to answer for anything. And you, what do you do when you notice this veiled jealousy? Do you try to prove there is no reason? Do you try to convince him he can trust? Or do you begin to ask yourself why you have to justify feelings that were never assumed? Sartre said, "Love is an attempt to possess the freedom of the other, and jealousy is the first reflex of that impulse. But true love only exists when there is the courage to admit fear, to recognize the importance of the other without trying to hide it behind indifference. Are you in a relationship where jealousy manifests without a voice? And if so, how long will you accept being measured by someone who doesn't show themselves? You bring up the subject. Ask delicately. Suggest carefully. And he, always gentle, slips out of the conversation, changes the topic, laughs, says he doesn't like labels, that he prefers to let things flow, that feelings are complicated. And so, once again, the essential goes unsaid. There is a persistent refusal to name what is there, alive, pulsing, but kept under control. He feels, but he refuses to speak about it. For Sartre, speaking is an act of creation. By naming something, we make it real. Saying "I love you" is more than reporting an emotion. It is assuming a commitment to that emotion. And for someone who lives in constant flight from their own freedom, that simple phrase becomes an existential risk. Because by saying what he feels, he commits himself to the truth of himself. And there is no turning back. The refusal to talk about feelings is, in fact, an attempt to maintain power. As long as nothing is said, anything is possible. He may want you, but he can also deny it. He may seek you, but also disappear. He may admire you, but never commit. He becomes free of consequences, and you, prisoner of ambiguity. Perhaps he has already said phrases like, "I don't want to hurt you," or "I don't want to ruin what we have." These justifications are kind but deceptive, because by not talking about what he feels, he is already hurting you, and what you have is already being corroded by the absence of definition. When someone avoids emotional dialogue, they are not protecting the bond. They are numbing themselves in the face of the fear of failure. But feelings do not disappear because they are not spoken. On the contrary, they grow, distort, become monsters between the lines. What could be shared with honesty turns into tension, demands, resentment. And the one who feels ends up blaming themselves. You begin to think that you are too intense, too demanding, too impatient. When in reality, you are only trying to exist in a space where everything is kept in the maybe. Have you ever caught yourself imagining that if you were calmer, he might open up? That if you gave more time, he would feel safe? That if you loved in silence, he might feel the same? But that is not love. That is anxious waiting, disguised as patience. Loving someone who refuses to speak is like trying to build a house on borrowed land. At any moment, everything can collapse. Sartre would say that we are responsible for what we do with what was done to us. If he learned not to speak of feelings, that is his inheritance. But to continue in this game of silence is your choice, and it is in that your freedom resides. You are trying to love someone who protects themselves from their own emotion. But what about you? What are you protecting by accepting this silence? He remembers that you prefer coffee without sugar, stops by the store just to buy that cookie you like, sends you a message when he knows you had a hard day without asking anything, closes your window when it gets cold without looking at you. These small gestures, done almost automatically, betray an affection that has not yet found a voice. They are cares he offers without thinking, as if caring for you were part of his body, a habit stronger than reason itself. But there is one disturbing detail in this. He does not recognize these gestures as declarations. If you mention it, he denies it. Says he would do it for anyone, that it's just kindness, that you are exaggerating. And at this point you find yourself divided between trusting what you feel or censoring yourself for feeling it, because he cares, but does not assume. Sartre reminds us that action is an extension of the project we are. We are not only what we say, but what we do with what we choose. And if he cares, protects, offers himself in these small gestures, it is because, in some way, he has already chosen you, but perhaps he hasn't yet chosen to be someone who assumes that choice. He is paralyzed between the immanence of caring and the transcendence of admitting. This kind of implicit love is an emotional trap, because it wraps you in a cloak of unnamed affections. It keeps you warm with presence, but cold with lack of direction. You feel loved, but never fully claimed. You feel important, but never confirmed. It's like living in a limbo where affection exists, but the relationship never materializes. And the cruelest part, these gestures create a bond without words, without promises, without agreements. A bond where you end up giving yourself in exchange for fragments. And perhaps you begin to accept less than you deserve, because these small cares make you believe that deep down he loves you. He just doesn't know how to say it. But there is an essential question here. How long can you live on gestures that never fully assume themselves? How long will you keep interpreting each action as a sign of a love he refuses to declare? Sartre would say that man is the being who projects himself beyond what he is. He becomes what he does with his freedom. And you too. By accepting crumbs as a feast, you are choosing to live in the shadow of a possible, but never whole, love. Do you want to continue translating gestures as if they were promises? Or are you ready to say out loud what he insists on keeping silent? Everything seems light. He laughs, makes jokes, turns into irony everything that could be serious. Says you two would make a strange couple. Teases that you are too intense. Acts surprised when someone hints at something between you. And deep down in the joke, there is always a hesitation. A surgical care so that nothing sounds like truth, but nothing is completely false. He protects himself behind humor, because laughing is safer than admitting. But each of these jokes carries an unspoken emotional charge. They are shields. He speaks in jest what he doesn't have the courage to say in truth. And you feel it. You know there's something hidden behind the laughter, because the laugh comes before the answer, because he watches your reaction with slight discomfort, because the joke, as light as it may seem, always touches the same wound. Sartre would say that bad faith is the effort not to be what one is. When he jokes about loving you, but masks it in irony, he is trying to exist in a gray zone, where desire is released by language, but neutralized by form. It's as if, he says, I want you to know I think about it, but I don't want to be responsible for it. And this kind of emotional game is exhausting, because you no longer know what is real. He provokes you, but retreats. He praises you, but mocks you soon after. He suggests intimacy, but disguises it with sarcasm. He creates closeness, but always with a carpet of jokes so he can flee if necessary. And you find yourself trapped in a cycle of interpretation. Does he feel, or is he just having fun? The answer may lie in the hurt that the joke causes. If it hurts, it's because it says something true. If it bothers, it's because it overflows from the realm of humor into the field of denial. No one laughs so much at something they don't fear, and he fears. He fears what he feels for you. He fears that by abandoning the joke, he must assume an emotional responsibility he has long been fleeing. Have you laughed along, trying not to show that it hurt you? Have you pretended not to care, just to keep the mood light? Have you answered with another joke, just so you wouldn't seem vulnerable? These small jokes hide the fear of saying, I care. But the silence that follows, the change of subject, the shift in his gaze, all of this reveals that there is more, that the joke is only the surface. Sartre reminds us that every choice is an act, and by turning feelings into jokes, he chooses not to assume the risk of loving. But you also have a choice, to laugh with him or to interrupt the game. Do you want to continue being the comic character in a story that never becomes drama? Or are you ready to leave the stage and demand the truth? He feels your withdrawal, notices when you start to pull back, when your presence is no longer guaranteed, when you begin to set boundaries. He notices, and that bothers him, but not enough to act. He reacts with subtleties, increases contact, offers compliments, sends a random memory, signs that he doesn't want to lose you. But still, He does not move, does not make a decision, does not assume what he feels, does not choose you clearly. Sartre said that to choose is to make oneself be, and at this point, he dissolves, because he doesn't know, or doesn't want, to make himself be with you. He wants to avoid the void your absence would cause, but also wants to avoid the commitment your presence demands. He remains paralyzed in a state of near choice, of repressed desire, of unlived affection. It's like someone at the edge of a bridge, seeing you on the other side, about to cross alone, and all he can say is, wait, but he doesn't cross, doesn't extend his hand, doesn't take the risk of falling. He wants you to stay where you are, standing, waiting for a gesture he himself doesn't have the courage to make. That hesitation hurts, because it deceives. It makes it seem that the feeling is about to be assumed, that only a little more patience, a little more time is missing. But time goes by, and he remains there, present, yet absent, affectionate, yet uncommitted, full of signs, yet empty of positioning. And so, you are consumed by waiting for a movement that never comes. The truth is that he doesn't want to lose you, but he also doesn't want to give up his comfort zone. Because choosing you implies renouncing effective anonymity, implies taking a stand, assuming the risk of being rejected or of not being up to the task, implies leaving neutrality, a safe territory for those who still haven't faced themselves. Have you already experienced this? Felt that someone tried to hold you without embracing you? Noticed that his fear of losing you was stronger than his courage to choose you? Sartre would say that not choosing is already a choice. By not acting, he is deciding. Deciding not to love you fully. Deciding not to face the anguish that every freedom brings. And you, by continuing to wait, are also choosing. Choosing to accept crumbs, choosing hope as a refuge. But what if you stop? And if, instead of waiting for him to choose, you choose yourself? And if his fear of losing you finally forces him to see himself as someone who loses by not acting? Are you ready to stop being who waits and become who crosses the bridge alone? He speaks of the future with enthusiasm. Plans, desires, goals. Talks about moving to another city, taking a new course, buying a house or traveling the world. Shares dreams, ideas, utopias. But there is always one absent detail. You aren't in those plans. You don't appear in the sentences. You aren't in the images he paints with words. He projects a tomorrow, where you are only the today. That small detail, though minor, is devastating, because your absence in his future reveals more than your presence in the present. It reveals that, within him, there is still a denial of continuity of the bond. He appreciates you, enjoys your company, likes the affection, the routine, the moments, but all of that remains contained in the now. He forbids himself from carrying you forward, as if the lightness of the relationship were only possible if kept in the ephemeral. Sartre teaches us that humans are a project, and to project oneself means choosing, among infinite possibilities, the one we want to realize. A project without the other is an affirmation of individuality that refuses commitment. He is saying, though without words, you make me feel good, but you are not part of who I am becoming, and you feel that. In the pauses after each plan, in the way he changes, the subject when you ask, and us, in how he never uses we. He lives with you, but does not walk alongside you. He inhabits the now, but flees the possibility of continuity. And perhaps you have started doing the same, avoiding the future topic, accepting that you live a beautiful but suspended story, a story that does not allow itself to grow, because you fear that by speaking of the future, the present will break. But that suspension has a cost, because not talking about the future is also not committing to the present. Everything becomes an instant, and when everything is an instant, nothing is whole. You live a relationship where there is affection, but no direction, where there is care, but no project, where there is presence, but no continuity. Sartre reminds us, man is not what he is, but what he makes of himself, and this applies to bonds. There is no love without a project. There is no relationship without choice, and to choose implies looking forward and saying, I want. You there too. Have you ever found yourself trying to fit into a plan that wasn't yours? Caught yourself silencing the desire to dream together, just to avoid scaring him? Accepted being someone's today when you wanted to be there tomorrow as well? The decision isn't about forcing him to include you. The decision is about including yourself. Looking at yourself and asking, in what kind of future do I want to be? With whom? How? And most importantly, why am I accepting not to be remembered in that future? The love that doesn't include you tomorrow is asking you to disappear bit by bit, and you deserve someone who writes you into the next pages, not just in the footnotes of the present. Sartre said, living is this, constantly balancing between choices and consequences. Now it's your turn. What do you choose knowing all this?